Well, welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. Haven't seen you in a while. Glad to be back and glad to have you back. Tonight I'm going to do a product review on the Field Skillet. And I'm going to do a really hard test on a brand new skillet, a cheese omelet. And that's a really hard test on a brand new skillet. Let's get cooking. So before I show you the new skillet, I'm going to show you some old ones and talk generally about cast iron. This is a Benjamin Medwin. It's not a skillet I like. I don't use it much. My husband used to use it. It's the closest I have to what you would find in a new lodge. It's not smooth. It's pre-seasoned. You can feel with the spatula here that it's a little rough. And as far as I know, there's nothing you can do short of sandblasting, and I'm not suggesting that, to make it smooth. I just don't care for new skillets. And that's because compared to these old skillets, they're just not as good, in my humble opinion. See the difference in the finish? This is an old skillet. It's one I use a lot. It's a Griswold. I don't know how old it is, maybe 70, 80 years old. I was lucky and someone gave it to me, refinished it. And it's just as smooth as it can be. And this is not smooth from oil. This is the pan. It is this smooth. This is a Wagner, and you can see it's about the same age. And it's also just as smooth as it can be. So I love to use these. I don't have a new Lodge skillet because I have these, so why would I? But in order to have these, you have to go to auctions or yard sales or inherit them from a grandmother or great-grandmother, and not everybody has the option to get these old skillets. So when I heard about the Field Skillet, I was excited, and I pledged to the Kickstarter campaign. So just so you know, this was not given to me, or I didn't get a discount. I pledged about a year ago. It took almost a year for me to get my skillet, and it was pricey. It was a $100 pledge. But you can see that this skillet is smooth. And I'm going to go over these directions with you to get this skillet ready to cook. They're very simple. I'm going to type them in because I think they're pretty important. Scrub gently with warm water, optional mild dish soap. It is a myth that you can't use soap on your cast iron. It comes from a time when soap was made with lye and was very, very rough. I always suggest that folks wash their pans with a mild soap. I use Dawn. Then you want to towel dry, and you can use a paper towel, but a cloth towel actually gives you better results. And I just want to mention the weight of this skillet is so much lighter than any other new skillet I've ever checked out. It's more like an old Griswold, a lighter feel to it. So I have it now on the heat, and when it's fully dry, I will oil it. Now, they give guidance here on the type of oil to use. A saturated fat. I never use vegetable oil. And coconut oil is their favorite, but they also say there is truth to the old-timer stories about using lard, and being an old-timer myself, I use lard. So this is a very thin layer of lard, and once I get it on, I will wipe off as much of it as I can. Now, I actually have my heat on. The pan's not really, really hot yet. If you're worried about that, turn it off first. And here I did a step that is not in the directions. Once I got the oil on, the lard on, I let it come back up to heat to the point that it just starts to smoke. And I did that because that's how I take care of my old cast iron pans. So I'm heating it up. When it starts to just smoke, I'll turn it off. And I don't know if you can see it, but we're starting to get just a tiny bit of smoke. So I'm going to turn the heat off. See, I think you can see it there. And that begins the process of building up a polymerized coat, which is what keeps your skillets smooth and non-stick. And you know, cast iron is not actually totally non-stick, but it's about as close as you can get without the added chemicals of Teflon or other non-stick things. And if you look at that, you know, that's a good looking skillet. And I'm just excited to use it. I'm using a towel to wipe it down. It's not as black and as dark as the other ones, but I think it will get that way. And there's none of that pebbly feel that you get from new skillets now. So let's try it. We're going to do a test. I've got a little bacon I'm browning here, you know, because bacon's always appropriate. And I'm going to try a cheese omelet. Now, usually when you're refinishing a skillet, even a good old skillet like the Griswold, they tell you have to season it a few times before you can cook eggs. So this is a real test of this new skillet. And you know, if this omelet turns out perfect, I'll be really surprised. But you know, I often do things that I don't know how they're going to turn out. We'll just find out together. So I have a little bacon fat, and I've added just a little bit of butter, just one pat. You want your heat to be low, medium low, but on the low side. And I let it heat up until it starts to bubble. With an omelet, low heat is essential. So this is a new pan for me. I'll see how it works with an omelet. I have 3 eggs beaten up with a tablespoonful of water, and I have another video on omelets, but this is more a test of the pan than an omelet tutorial. And then I'm going to do a little salt, and I used red pepper. And I do this pretty quickly because you have to move pretty quickly within the first 10 to 15 seconds to pull your omelet back from the pan. And I'll show you how I do that. And this is a trick I learned years ago on some TV cooking show. It might have been Julia Child. But after you've had it in the pan about 15 seconds, you pull it back from the sides and you let the raw egg fill up the spots. And I'm going to have to wait a second on the other 2 sides. And I had to turn my heat up just a little to pull them back on the other sides, and I'll have to fill in the gaps. So first time using a new skillet, you know, you have to get used to it. So I'm smoothing that out and keeping my heat fairly low until it's almost done. And you test that by lightly touching the top. You don't want it cooked hard, but you want it firm before you add your cheese and try to flip it. So I have some little sticks of cheese here, and I do that instead of grated just because it's easier to handle and I can stack it up, because you know, you can never have too much cheese. And then I'm going to loosen it from the sides very gently just to make sure it isn't stuck. And I'm, you know, being very careful not to tear it. And the moment of truth, let's see how this flips. And you know, I don't know. It's a brand new pan. Let's see. Whoa. Well, I had not quite perfect. Close to perfect, but not quite. And if you see that little bit of browning, I generally try not to have that. Getting used to the new pan and how it conducts heat. I had the heat a little bit higher than I normally would have. But hey, that looks pretty darn good. So I let it stay in the pan about another minute so that the steam in the enclosed pouch there will melt that cheese. And then I'm going to plate it up. And look at that skillet where the cheese got on it. And cheese is kind of hard to get off. It just flips right off. So, you know, so far I'm pretty happy with this pan. We'll check this omelet out. I'll be right back. Okay, I confess, this omelet is not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. And the reason I say it's not perfect is we have a little brown edge, but you can see that nice cheese melted in there. I'm going to dip it in just a little bit of my homemade salsa. And I said it again, I'm getting repetitious. This is a hard test for a new cast iron pan. Usually you have to season it several times or use it several times before you can do eggs. This is an extraordinary pan. Now I will wash this in some mild soap and hot water, but right now it has not been washed. I'm just wiping it out so that you can see that it's already very non-stick. And I am so happy. You know, $100 is not easy to come by. And I think when they get to the stores, they won't be that expensive. But this was a great investment. I will use this forever, and maybe my granddaughter will use it forever. Let me share with you the directions say, as we already know, acidic foods are rough on seasoning, tomatoes, lemons, wine, vinegars. It's going to be a while before you've built up enough seasoning for these foods. But from experience, I can tell you, once you've built up that seasoning, acidic foods won't hurt them as long as you don't let them sit and you wash them right away. It says we encourage you to be patient, but we also encourage you to be brave and not baby your skillet. It also says that boiling water, especially with salt, is rough on seasoning. I know lots of folks use salt to clean their cast iron. I don't, and I don't recommend it, but you know, do what your grandma did if it works for her. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. Hope to see you again tomorrow.